Welcome to the Zambian case. This is a case of money laundering corruption that is conducted in Zambia. And Zambia is a country that is located close to South Africa, or the southern side of its African continent. And it is a country that is landlocked, and it is surrounded by, or it's bordering with countries such as Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia, Angola, and Congo, and Tanzania. So Zambia is actually located around these countries and is also at the tip of the African map. So this is a case on Zambia, and this case is actually implemented by the Attorney General of Zambia for the recovery of funds they believe that have been corrupted by the former heads of state, former permanent secretary for the president's office, and former accountants for the president's office. So it's actually a case that actually brought about these facts. And it's a case that is conducted not in Zambia, but the Attorney General brought the case in the jurisdiction of England and Wales. So So here is how the case started. This case is actually conducted for financial crimes and corruption that occurred between 1995 and 2001. And the funds that have been involved in this case was estimated to be 52 million in gross. So from 1995 to 2001, these players are in the government of Zambia. So in the Ministry of Finance, there is an accountant by the name of Kwabwe. So Kwabwe was the accountant in charge in the Ministry of Finance, as well as the Office of the President in the Zambia Presidential Office. So the other two players within Zambia that involved in this case was the head of military, which is Mr. Chung here, and also the permanent secretary within the Zambia Presidential Office. And these players, they use the financial expertise of one solicitor that is located in London, England, by the name of Mr. Mia, who owns a solicitor firm in London. So this solicitor here, by the name of Mr. Mia, actually came in contact with Mr. Kabwe. Mr. Mia and Mr. Kabwe, the Zambian accountant, they actually met around in 1992 for a property transaction in London. So Mr. Mia actually did all the solicitor work for this transfer of estate in 1992. So from 1992, they had a close relationship. So in 1995, Mr. Kabwe set up this company here, AFCL. It's a financial company, set it up and established in London. And so, after the establishment of this company, Mr. Mr. Mia to transfer all these transactions into these AFSL accounts. So here AFSL accounts is providing the services for the Zambian security intelligence. So it actually provides the services to Zambia, located in Zambia. It is agreed between the accountant of AFSL and the solicitor here, Mr. Mia, that any funding that's coming in from Zantrap account will basically entitled to be paid to AFSL as a agreed provider of service to Zambia security intelligence. So that was the basis of this agreement at this initial stage in 1995. So from 1995 to 2001, there was a movement of funds between the Ministry of Finance in Zambia to this account called Zamtrop. Zamtrop is an account based in London under the Zambia National Commercial Bank Limited. So these two actually function out from Zambia, but they are also operated within London. So under the instruction of Kabwe in Zambia Presidential Office as well as the Ministry of Finance, they wired around 52 million USD between 1995 and year 2000 in the name of debt repayments. So the funds that have been wired from Zambia to London was purposely for debt repayments. Now, between these debt repayments in the Zamtrop account in London, they paid Solicitor 1, Solicitor 2, and other accounts such as AFSL, which is owned by Mr. Kabwe. So here, AFCL used its account to make payable entitlements to Mr. Kabwe himself, Mr. Kabwe families, and Mr. Kabwe relatives. So this case came about as a result of this Attorney General who tried to save the country. So out of this court case, they found that 9 million USD as a result of this entire network by Mr. Kabwe resulted in the recovery of 9 million at that time. So if we just go by that officers have been implicated, and this was the summary of what actually been said by the Attorney General of the Zambia. So out of all this transaction, we can look at a summary of the case that have been done, and questions that should be asked, like what have been accountants and lawyers as the first line or second line defense in terms of money laundering, what role they actually put in place to save the public funds. So here we know that some of the money laundering laws in some of the jurisdictions that we have is basically have a safeguard where accountants and solicitors and lawyers, they have to act and always be cautious about the incidences of money laundering. So here we have a lawyer who's providing services to help with the money laundering scheme. So these are the things that, based on the jurisdictions and laws that each one govern, one should look at how this scheme can be able to tackle and able to implicate lawyers themselves and accountants who are also involved in money laundering. The other one would be the practical challenges on putting your hands on your investigation for cross-border investigations. So here, as you can see, if we look at the case again, now we can say that, okay, funds that have been deposited into Mr. Kabwe or his family's siblings or his spouse, for example, if the funds have been entered there through AFSL from Zambia. So if there is no investigation that have been done to go in depth to look at what actually done from there in London, between London and Zambia, for lazy investigators, that will definitely put off this chain and this network that's conducted by this by this accountant in Zimbabwe. So some accountants and investigators would see that investigating such crimes involve cross-border and it's too expensive. But they are actually dealing with situations where funds can be remitted back to their own countries, or they build wealth outside of the country. So it depends on the willingness of the investigators. But as the case stands, it actually providing a lot of lessons for first line of defense in money laundering for accountants and lawyers, as well as ensuring that the contracts of debt repayments or payment of procurements and all this stuff, they are based on what we discuss in this scenario. It's involved a lot of issues, especially with money laundering.